Hi guys, it's Mandy from Mandyleeplays. About 2 years ago, I released my intro to Atelier, but now, since a bunch of new games have come out, I wanted to redo that video into a more updated version. But not only that, I wanted to add more stuff that I didn't add in my original intro to Atelier. So if you don't know the series, now is a good chance for you to get to know the series. And before we get into it, if you end up liking the video, then please hit that like button. And if you like videos like this and many more regarding JRPGs and RPGs, then please consider subscribing. I'm trying to get to 10k by the end of the year, and I hope we could do it. So without further ado, let's get into all the Atelier goodness. The Atelier series has been quietly crafting its own legacy since 1997, with its first game releasing on the PlayStation 1, Atelier Marie and the Alchemist of Salzburg. And while that game was only a Japan exclusive game at its time, it did get the remastered treatment and it was released for the West, for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and the PC. But yeah, this indeed was the first game in the series, but the people in the West wouldn't have never played it unless they remade it. So Western audience didn't really get a taste of Atelier games until Atelier Iris, which launched on the PlayStation 2 in 2005. Now this is weird because Atelier Iris was the 5th game in the series, so their inclusion to start with Iris for the West is honestly questionable. To this day, I don't know why they did that, but it is what it is. It got the ball rolling for the Atelier series in the long run. And what once was a niche RPG became a full-fledged alchemy-focused JRPG. And over the years, we've been seeing a lot of growth when it comes to the franchise, especially during a certain game's release that really got it to the mainstream. Although the Atelier series is still considered niche to this day, but not as niche as it was before. Now the series boasts up to 26 games and soon to become 27. Also, not to mention the DX versions. I've seen some confusion as to what a DX version is. It's essentially a definitive edition for Atelier games, kind of like your Kingdom Hearts 2 to your Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. Now 26 games might be a little intimidating, and I perfectly understand, and that's exactly why I made this video too, to let you guys know what the best way to play these games are, what they're about, and where to get started. Because who knows, it might be your next favorite JRPG. The overarching plot for each game is basically you play as an amateur alchemist who wants to take their skills to the next level. The curiosity about the world and the alchemy craft makes them want to get better and better. And even though each story is somewhat different, they all share the same themes. For example, in one game, you must help a girl from a mining town study for the alchemy exam, which is, of course, Atelier Furus, one of my favorites. Another character uses alchemy to understand not just a lost kingdom, but also her mother, giving it a more personal feel to the story, and that is Atelier Yumiya. Or if the protagonist just wants to graduate and not lose her shop, aka Atelier Marie, which is the first game in the series. So while all the plots are different, the central themes are still the same, and it all goes back to this overarching plot of wanting to level up their alchemy skills and help other people. So essentially, it's kind of a fish out of water aspect when it comes to alchemy. None of our protagonists are pros at it. They have to go through the story and level up their own alchemy to become better. Now to define what an arc is. So basically, an arc is a certain cluster of games that have the same themes, characters, and worlds. The common question I still hear to this day, and even in my last video, is if the stories are connected and where should I start? Now to answer that first question. In short, no. These games are not connected, but they kind of are. These games are usually bunched together in trilogies, and so the way they work is those games within the trilogy do share a little bit of plot and environments, so essentially you could play whichever game that you want in any order. Although, to get the best out of these stories, I would recommend you start at the beginning of a trilogy and then work your way to the end of the trilogy, mainly because there are certain characters that pop in or make references, and you won't really get it as well if you just met these characters and didn't really know their backstories. And among the 10 different arcs, most people in the fandom split them into 2, and we have the modern Atelier and the old Atelier. The older Atelier games are the lesser known ones, and the ones that we don't see a lot just because most of them are still Japanese exclusive, or they're hard to get, or they're on consoles that are not supported anymore. We have the Salzburg trilogy, which includes Atelier Marie, its remake, Atelier Ellie, and Atelier Lily. The Grandma duology includes Atelier Julie and Atelier Violet. Sorry if I mispronounced any of these. Then there's the Atelier Iris Iris trilogy. These games include Atelier Iris 1, 2, and 3. Now this is where it gets a bit confusing because the Monokami duology does not have the Atelier named, but it's considered a numbered game. And that is the old Atelier games. I honestly haven't played any of the old ones, and I hope one day Koei Tecmo remakes them, kind of like how they did it with Atelier Marie. Now anything beyond that is what I considered the modern Atelier games. The first one is the Arlen Quadrology. Originally it was a trilogy, but they added a game to it. And this contains Atelier Rorona, Totori, Memoru, and Lalula. Lalula was added years after the original games came out, but it basically takes place in the same universe as the Arlen trilogy, and it does have story relevance to the Arlen trilogy. And it's one of those rare cases that they reopen a previous arc to add a new game, though it won't be the last time. Then you have the Dust trilogy. We have Atelier Aisha, Eska and Logi, and Shally. And the really unique thing about this trilogy is you get to play as dual protagonists in 2 of the games. The next arc is the Mysterious trilogy. We have Atelier Sophie, Fierce, and Lady and Suelle. Like Atelier Lalua, they did add another game into the mix, and that being Atelier Sophie 2. And then we have the Secret trilogy, which is basically the Ryza trilogy, and that includes Ryza 1, 2, and 3. Then there is finally the current releases, which include Atelier Yumiya, and her series is currently ongoing. Now for the gameplay of these beloved games. The synthesis mechanics are central to these Atelier games. I mean, look at the name. It's kind of like cooking, except you're making various materials and a lot of advanced items like weapons, armor, things of that nature. It's a one-stop shop to basically anything in your game. When I first played my first Atelier game, which is Ryza 1, I was pretty much blown away with all the mechanics that were going on, and I was kind of intimidated too, not gonna lie. But once I got it, it just clicked with me, and I slowly got addicted to it. To start, the games usually change their alchemy systems after each arc or trilogy. The Dust trilogy has a different alchemy than the Ryza trilogy. So think of the start of every arc as a new, fresh way to do the alchemy system. So if you don't like the alchemy system of a certain game, go to a different arc of that game and it'll be totally different and you might totally click with it. Also, even though the alchemy changes between each arc or trilogy, a lot of the same mechanics do stay the same, just in a different way. My favorite one currently is the Ryza trilogy alchemy system. So I'm not gonna go over all the nitty-gritty when it comes to the gameplay because honestly I'll be here forever, but I do want to go over certain key phrases. The first one is the quality. The quality usually affects the power of an item. Usually higher quality items gives it better healing or damage to the enemy. Plus it gives the added benefits of having a higher value when selling them too. Now time for the traits. Traits are usually unique effects given to an item when crafting. This usually ranges from stat boosts to added bonuses. So you're going to want to keep an eye on what traits each item has when you synthesize them, because in the end product you could pick a trait to put in the final item, which honestly makes these games very fun to experiment with. And with each new item that you synthesize, your protag does level up. The alchemy leveling is different from your battle combat leveling. With each level you could craft more and more items and put more and more power into your synthesis. And also it might unlock certain things that make the whole process easier. So of course alchemy is pretty much key to a lot of these games. If you don't like the alchemy system, then you probably won't like the game. Now I've been talking a lot about the synthesizing, but how exactly do you get items for the synthesizing? Well, that is simple. Gather and battle. So gathering is pretty much self-explanatory. You go explore the world and gather different items from different places. There's also places where you have to use tools. Now I will say gathering in Atelier Yumiya is much more funner than gathering in Atelier Aisha, mainly because Aisha's world is not as pretty and lush and open world as Yumiya is, but it's basically the same thing. You just take items and you gather them. And then there's also battling different enemies for monster parts and things of that nature. Most of the Atelier games do play like a traditional turn-based RPG, but in later games they will take a more action RPG approach with Atelier Ryza and Yumiya, and you level up as you go. I will admit that the older Atelier games don't really have that big of a battle impact with some people. They could be pretty underwhelming and just bland, but I am happy to say that in current Atelier games, the gameplay is very, very good. Alrighty, now let's talk about the time mechanic. That's another question that I get asked a lot. What games have it and what games don't? Put it simply, most modern Atelier games don't have a time mechanic, although some of them do. So in short, here are all the games that have the time mechanic, and here are all the games that don't have a time mechanic. Now my opinion is I'd rather not have the time mechanic, mainly because I don't like to be timed on stuff, especially for my nice cozy games. But the ones that I have played that do have the time mechanic honestly wasn't as bad as I thought. I actually had to kill time in those games to get things rolling. Although there are some games that do pose a challenge with the time mechanic, like Atelier Marie. I really enjoyed how they handled it, mainly because you have the option to shut it down if you don't want to. But if you play the game with the time mechanic, it is really fair, and it does keep the pace of the game moving. Now the Arlen trilogy is notorious for having a very strict time mechanic. I'm kind of intimidated from playing that game, honestly, but I am still gonna play it. So one thing I want to say is save scum the heck out of the ones that are timed, because there's times where you want to go back to fix something, or if you end up running out of time, you could just boop to the previous save and do it again. Always save when it comes to any game, frankly, but especially with Atelier games with the time mechanic. But overall, I'm really glad that more modern Atelier games are doing away with the time mechanic, because it really clashes with the whole chill and cozy vibe they're trying to go for, and the slice of life enjoyment when it comes to these games. Now on to the big question, where to actually start? You can always start with Atelier Yumiya and work your way backwards, but I suggest you start with Atelier Ryza. It does a lot of things to make it more accessible to newcomers, and it's honestly where I started. My first Atelier game was Atelier Ryza, the Ever Darkness and the Secret Hideout, and I never looked back. Although, I would suggest waiting for the DX versions of Ryza, and that comes out in November. Alrighty, that is it for my DX version of Intro to Atelier. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this video helpful. If you did, share it around to anybody who might want to get into this series. Please leave a like if you liked it, and consider subscribing. I'm trying to get to 10K, and I really want to get there, so hopefully we get there. Please tell me in the comments down below, are you new to the series? Are you old? Is there any questions? All that good stuff. And if this video does well, I do want to do more intros to different series, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and maybe I'll continue this series, who knows. So without further ado, I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and as always, play a good game. Peace, peace.